Welcome to this edition of Finance and Technology Insights. I'm Brian Williams from Northshire Consulting. He's Eric Buhrendorf from EVERNET. Today, we're going to cover a lot of good stuff. We are going to talk about the Binance FTX deal that just went down shortly before today. We're going to nerd out a little bit on 401k stuff for the end of the year to get you going on that. And we will also cover some information about the lottery winners, which was not Eric, was not me. If it was, we would not be doing this podcast or show. But that's what we're going to cover today. Anything else, Eric?
That's it. Stay tuned. We got a good show. We'll talk about what to do when you win that Powerball. This is a nice segue. So if when I win the 1.9 billion jackpot, who's going to help me manage that? So I've got a couple articles here. One of the articles is an attorney that the article says after you hit the jackpot, quote, "Don't do this," says Philadelphia lawyer.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about that and see what your input was on that. And then in the same vein, another article from CNBC, Powerball's 1.9 billion jackpot is the biggest ever, but Mark Cuban and Kevin O'Leary disagree on what you should do if you win. So let me just say, this is the easier point. Mark Cuban and Kevin O'Leary, both judges on the Shark Tank, right?
Yep.
Mark Cuban says, take the annuity, take the 50 mil a year paycheck. Certainly if you're under 40, and it will help you not spend all of your money, before you die, kind of thing.
Yep. Sure.
Kevin O'Leary says, take the lump sum. It's your money. Give yourself a paycheck that you can live by, and then use all that cash to invest it and grow it. What do you think?
Well, so that's one of those interesting things that's, you can spreadsheet it out, or you can do dollars and cents. And I think if you run the dollars and cents, the lump sum makes sense. But there's a whole emotional and psychology. I mean, we know, seeing the numbers about the amount of people that win the lottery end up broke or bankrupt or all that kind of stuff. And you see it in athletes and, childhood
MC Hammer.
actors. Yeah. So you have to kind of be honest with yourself if that happens. I think when you get to a number that big, I would agree with the annuity, even though you might end up with less money in the long term. It's like, man, just you get that for 30 years, and it's more than you're ever going to spend anyway.
50 million a year.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. So, just to kind of save yourself from yourself, it's probably not a bad idea, just because the number is so large. If it's something a little bit less than that, I mean, when you get around 10 million, it's like, boy, I don't know. That's kind of the break point.
Do you have any knowledge as to what a sort of succession plan is for jackpot winners like that? Like, if you were to take the annuity and you died in 3 years, does the state just make out like a bandit, or does your estate have entitlement to the annuity?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a lot of times it's almost like getting a pension benefit, where you'll get, the number will be this single, and then they'll do like a single person, and then your spouse will get 5 years after you die, or spouse permanently. So when you get a pension, usually it has those options in that. I don't know if the lottery has that. If they don't, a lot of times what people will do is take some of that initial payment that they get, that 50 million the first year, and then use that to buy some life insurance to guarantee. So you can say, all right, if I die in 3 years, we want to make sure, my spouse is taken care of, and that kind of stuff. So you kind of play with those numbers and figure out what the best way to do that is.
One of the don'ts that this article from Philadelphia, this lawyer from Philadelphia says, is don't sign your name on the ticket right away,
right?
Unless you know that the government isn't going to publish your name. But anecdotally, I think I've read that in many cases, the best thing to do is to sign the ticket as an LLC that your newly appointed or newly hired attorney has formed for you, to allow you to remain anonymous, but is it also so that because the LLC doesn't die, so therefore the LLC can then benefit from the virtue of the full annuity. Do you think there's something to that?
Yeah, there could be something there. And
It'd
the
be a
idea
bummer
is,
if the kids missed out on 1.9 bill if you die after a couple of years, and
yeah,
you know,
or they knock you off thinking that they're going to cash in on it, and then they don't get anything out of it anyway.
right.
But yeah, no, there'd be some pretty significant estate planning around that. Um,
What would
so
you do if you got a call from an employee that said, "Hey, I just won 987 million on Powerball, so I'll be withdrawing from my plan that you administer."
I think that would probably be the least of their concerns. But no,
Probably.
I would say take make sure you have the ticket in a secure location, right? So even if you're not going to do anything for a couple weeks or two, or go to the bank, get a safety deposit box, put the ticket in there. Do some online research,
Don't tell
find
anybody.
find the attorney first. Yeah, yeah. Did you see the guy that won, that collected his winnings in the mask because he didn't want his family to know? He had like a big like bunny
I didn't
hat
see that.
costume or
No.
something. Yeah, and it wasn't even that. I mean, it's all relative, but it wasn't even that much. He won like, I don't know what it was. I think it was like 150 grand a year for 30 years or something. But he didn't want his family to know. But yeah, I mean, and I think it depends on the state whether they make your name public or not. So
Yeah, I think you're right.
yeah, so I don't even know what the rules are in Connecticut when I cash in my little $3 scratch off tickets. I said it's fine. Let the world know. Come
Right.
at me.
So
Um,
that's all I was bringing to the table today. Any other kind of parental words of wisdom to the jackpot winner from an investment standpoint?
yeah, I mean that would. Yeah, I mean, I think the whole idea of do nothing for a year probably isn't a bad idea. And even if you get the lump sum or the annuity, just do nothing. I mean, maybe pay off all your debts, and even pay off your house if you want to, and then just do nothing for a year, and kind of hang out. I think that's probably even what I would do. Is just, again, depending on the dollar amount, but we were discussing with my wife if she'd finish out the school year. I'm like, man, you got to finish out the school year. That's kind
Right,
of a
she's a
rough thing
teacher,
to
so
do.
she's not going to leave the kids high and dry. Well, let me ask you
Yeah.
this, because this will put our feet a little more on terra firma. Um, certainly most of our viewers out there, all 19 of them, will likely not ever be in possession of 900. I think the take home on a lump sum was like 900 million on 1.9 after taxes. So, um, you don't deposit a $900 million check at People's Bank, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
that's true.
and that's not rhetorical. I'm asking you, right? You're the money guy.
No,
You're in the
I'm
show. You don't take a $900 million check and go to Nutmeg Federal State Credit Union and deposit that, right?
well, no, and you have to think about FDIC insurance
Well, that's
and
what I'm
and
saying.
SIPC and all that sort of stuff too. So,
But you certainly
um,
don't find 100 banks in a 100-mile radius and put a million in each of them, right?
no, I mean, you have different limits with the spouse, and maybe that's another thing with the LLC too. You can, um, I mean, I think at that point you'd probably sign up for some sort of direct deposit, or maybe it's wired to somewhere, or probably set up a few different accounts. But
Well,
um,
that's literally my question though.
yeah,
Like I guess the risk, so FDIC insurance for the viewers out there is what, $100,000 insurance policy against your bank going bankrupt, right?
right. Yeah,
Or
250 now,
is it
250,000.
really 250 now?
Yeah, yeah,
So, okay, so maybe some 80% of the populace doesn't have more than $100,000 cash, right? So
mhm,
so that's a pretty good coverage. But then you have like this uber wealth, right? So like I said, you don't put $900 million in a checking account at Nutmeg Federal State Credit Union, right? I mean, because that's
yeah,
probably more than their entire
right.
asset pool, right?
You're right. Yeah, they wouldn't be able to handle it. Yeah, I mean, you got on a joint account, so it's per depositor, so you end up with 500,000. So you know,
It's like some different realm that only like
yeah,
1% of people can understand, right?
yeah.
I mean, is that where the Charles Schwabs and these like major New York Manhattan banks come in because their deposits or their assets are so gargantuan that like you are then protected if you have 900 million with one of those outfits. You know the likelihood of them going bust on your back is low.
Yeah, I mean, we went through that with in the financial crisis. You would think that, but
But
if you
then
have a
Lehman
brokerage,
Brothers went bust anyways.
yeah, if you have in a brokerage account, you have SIPC, which is a Securities Investor Protection Corporation. So you probably seen that sign and whatever, but that protects. So if you think about a brokerage account, you're buying mutual funds, you're buying ETFs, you're buying stocks. So let's say, for example, you have a Schwab account and something happens to Schwab, you're still a registered owner of those securities. So nothing really happens to those
Got it.
securities. Your issue would be your uninvested cash in the account. So,
Okay.
there's always people with brokerage accounts. There's always a little bit of extra cash hanging around there.
Right.
So that would be your issue.
Got
Charles
it.
Schwab's also a bank, so you have FDIC insurance there. And then there's also brokered CDs, which are if you have a brokerage account now, you can, instead of in the old days when you'd run around to every bank in town and buy CDs at every bank, you can go in a brokerage account and buy 250,000 from this bank and put a CD that 250,000 from this bank. So you can structure that all under one umbrella through a brokerage account. So and we do that for clients now, not because of the size of their assets, but just because different banks pay different rates and whatever. And you go in and you say, oh, ABC Bank in Seattle, it has this, CD rate for 4 years that they're running a special on. So let's go in and buy that sort of thing. So, so I guess that's pretty much how you structure it. I've never dealt with a lottery winner in full disclosure, but yeah, it'd be interesting, and what would be interesting about that is for somebody like me, how would you even bill somebody like that? I mean, you're not going to bill them on assets. I mean, because you get to a certain point, is it that much harder to run 100 million than 50 million? Probably, or that much harder to run 100 than 50? Probably not. So you're not necessarily going to charge them. So you probably have to put some sort of cap on it and all that kind of
Point
stuff. So,
0.0001 is
yeah,
still
I know, 1
100 grand
basis
a
point
year.
or something. But yeah, so yeah,
That's cool.
interesting stuff.
Thanks for letting me pick your brain on that. So
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to bring to the table because it was relevant in the news cycle. What do you got for us today?
Well, it's funny actually. My story was pretty similar in a way. So this is talking about Binance. They bought FTX, which are two of the biggest cryptocurrency players, and this plays into what we were just talking about. So FTX had quote a liquidity crunch, which is basically one of the worst things you could have as a bank or brokerage or even as a business, where they don't have the ability to pay people out. If you think of,
Right.
kind of It's a Wonderful Life or something like that, right? Everybody's trying to get a run on the bank or whatever. So Binance came in and, basically they just got together and Binance said, all right, well, we can help you out here. So kind of interesting the way they, and I'm just going to share this quick here because there's a tweet I think here that's kind of funny.
Now I'm at I shouldn't say this for security, but I'm going to say it anyways. I'm at Coinbase. Is that one of those? Is that like
Yeah,
Binance?
Coinbase is a big one. So this was this was the head of Binance. He says this afternoon FTX asked for our help. There is a significant liquidity crunch. To protect investors, we have signed a non-binding letter of intent to fully acquire FTX.com and help cover the liquidity crunch. We will be conducting a full due diligence in the coming days. So this,
When
when I read this basically reminds me of the financial crisis, thinking back of '08. I remember I was down in Philadelphia. I went down there to watch the Brewers play. It was kind of the end of the season. And I remember driving back on a Sunday night listening to Bloomberg, and it was this bank's going to buy this bank, and this bank, it was,
Lehman Brothers was
JP Morgan's
on
going to
there.
step in and buy Chase and all that sort of stuff. And it was crazy. But this is, an example of it happening on a small scale. So people who are not, following this stuff, they say, oh, this is another crypto thing. And here's, crypto not being the adults in the room or something like this. But this happens with banks. This happens with, brokerage houses or,
Yeah, they oversold the restaurant, right?
yeah,
There's no
yeah.
food in the freezer.
Yeah. So you go back to, 87 long-term capital management with the stuff they were doing. And you go back to, Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers. And so this can happen, but it looks like it's been relatively,
What's the
um,
date here on that?
yeah, it hasn't really affected I woke up and I was looking at some of the crypto stuff, which is weird that I don't normally look at.
Brian, when was the tweet? When was this in the news cycle? Was this morning?
Yeah, let's go back to see when that tweet was.
Like this dropped
Yeah, I
today
mean,
or
this story is as of today,
November?
11:30.
Oh wow,
Uh,
this is just developing.
yeah, yeah. So there were issues, I believe, overnight because when I woke up and looked at some of the crypto stuff, I was like, why is crypto down so much?
How's your crypto doing? Is the whole
I have very very little crypto, and mine is just through my regular brokerage account. But yeah, I mean, it is a lead story on CNBC.com, and this says
wow?
Bitcoin surges $1,300 after Binance and FTX reach deal to fix liquidity crunch. But
That's interesting and in its own.
well, it is, and it's a bit of a misleading headline. Yeah, see, Bitcoin drops 9%. So they're talking about how the headline is about how it's up, but they're because it's a quick headline, they're not talking about how much it was down before.
Right.
Um, so so that's been pretty interesting. And then at a related, Fidelity is now going to offer Bitcoin access and crypto access in their 401k programs. For Us All was a company out of California that launched it earlier this year, kind of just honestly just to grab headlines a little bit, because they're not a big 401k shop, and you still need it's not implemented automatically in all plans, so you still need the business owner to say yes, this is a good idea, and then you need employees to say yes, I want this feature, and then even still they capped it at 5% of somebody's account balance, so it's not really moving the needle that much. But now Fidelity is kind of in that mix as well. So it's interesting. We've never had something like that in the 401k world where they'll add it, but they'll say we're going to limit this amount,
Right.
that you can access. So um,
Interesting.
yeah, that was a pretty interesting story, I thought.
Yeah, that is good. There was oh, what about yeah, what about DeFi? Or I don't know if that's a term. DeFi, decentralized finance is, I guess, the acronym. But what am I trying? The point I'm trying to make. The digital dollar. Do you have any
Mhm.
information on what the U.S. Treasury is doing with their crypto dollar? Have you ever read about anything like that?
Yeah, nothing recently. I know that was a topic for a while, but I think they've been so busy, um, through COVID and through interest rate stuff and going up and down. I don't think it's a big priority for them right now.
Right.
Um, and Bitcoin is actually, if you look at it over the last few months, it's really been
Is it
kind of a
tied?
boring asset class, which is probably a good thing as it matures. But it kind of found that floor around 20,000, and yeah, sometimes it goes to 18 and bounces up to 22. But it's kind of hung around there around that 20,000
Right.
range for a while. So
Hmm. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, I think that. Do you have any more meat on that bone, or do you have anything else
no,
you
I
wanted to
think that
share?
was just a story I thought would be pretty interesting. I will throw out there as we record this on election day. So from midterms till the end of the year, the last 19 periods like that have been positive. So you'll see articles like, well, whoever wins and who takes over the House and the Senate is going to drive markets. But this is leading into the midterms from January to early November is typically not a very good year for the markets, and obviously this held true this year. But then from midterms to the end of the year, the market typically does pretty well. So just
So
something to
you're
think
saying
about.
you
Not a
so you're
guarantee,
so
but
you're saying generally from the election day to the end of December, the market experiences an uptick.
yes, and that's doesn't matter what the results are, whether it's kind of um, a sweep by one party or a split
Right.
between Congress and the White House. It's just kind of like into the uncertainty of the first, 11, 10 months of the year.
And that only really matters if for those people who are trying to time the market, right?
Right, right. Or it's kind of a feel good exercise for some people now that you're like, well, we've had a rough year. You can be like, well, from now until the end of the year, blah, blah, blah. But,
I
you throw
wonder,
those data points out there. It doesn't matter whether it's 19 out of 19 or 49 out of 49. It's going to be broken at some point, right? I mean,
right. I
that's
wonder
just
if that uptick in the market is people trying to max out their retirement funds for the year, and all the we see a splurge in buying at the end of the year because
Mhm.
people are trying to spend off the books. So
Right.
maybe just and then of course you have holiday shopping. So um,
Advertising's a big one too.
all
For
around the
kind of
market
end of the year.
activity, yeah,
Yeah, you get
economic activity.
the proverbial Santa rally, right? So from mid-December till the end of the year is a pretty common occurrence. But
Cool. We're getting into some new marketing tools that are really shedding some exciting light on our. This is really kind of like specific, so forgive me for anybody who this is like a total snore. We're getting into like our website analytics and our website traffic and how that relates to the kind of content quality of our website pages. For years I thought of a website as more or less as a business card that somebody would go to, or if they're doing some general search, they would happen upon you. But
Mhm.
really, that's not how you leverage a website. You really want to think and build a website rich with content, so the searchers out there can kind of stumble upon some valued content, and then derive that you are a subject matter expert in whatever your content speaks of, and then that becomes the vector in which somebody becomes a new customer or client. So we're using some new tools, one specific tool called SEMRush, SEMRush. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or not,
Sure.
but we're um, we're taking the plastic off of that, and we're really exploring that, and it's pretty compelling.
And are you blogging too? Or are you driving those keywords to create blogs around them?
Exactly. Yeah. A blog. Well, it's funny because WordPress, where our site's on WordPress. So WordPress, I guess, was originally a blogger's format
Right.
or tool. So every kind of page, in essence, could be viewed in a blog format style. But I
Mhm.
guess we view blog as like me writing with my voice about some theme or topic.
Right.
So yes, we're going to be doing. We are trying to ramp up the blogging content farm, I guess. But we're also launching content pages, which are subject matter specific,
Mhm.
and we're trying to produce useful information per the topic of the page, the
Okay.
keyword, I guess.
Do
So
you
it's
have do you have any of that stuff live now that you could show?
well, yeah. I mean, everything's live. I don't know if I'm not versed enough in the tool to maybe show something. It might be kind of like behind the curtain right
Okay.
now that I'm not prepared to show, but I will. I think there's going to be some meaningful reports and dashboards that I'll be able to share at some point.
Yeah. Okay. So for us business wise, it's been starting to get into that year end mode. So it's people are looking for extra places to put some cash, or looking at, all right, I do my 401k. What else should I be doing? And normally you get that from business owners or the higher income people. But what I've seen is sort of the next generation, or even that group that's they're working and they know their 401k, and it's for 40 years away if they're 25. So they're saying, all right, what else can I do? And maybe they want to put $50 a paycheck into something else that's a little bit more accessible for purchase of a house, or just kind of that perpetual, long-term goal or something. So that's been kind of interesting. And that's been a lot of talk in the industry about that, of obviously part of the whole financial wellness game, but also part of emergency savings and things like that. Because a lot of times 401ks have been great because they've allowed people to put money directly through their paycheck, and then it goes in there. But a lot of times you find out that that's people's only savings. So car breaks down, need a new furnace, need whatever. It's going after that 401k to take a loan or some kind of hardship distribution. which is okay. It's better than not having it in the first place, right? But if we can say, all right, let's put a little bit into that 401k, you're 25, 30 years old, but let's also direct something else as a payroll slot, that's easy in, easy out. We'll put it, we'll build up something very safe. And then from that, we'll start to add to that. So that's been a pretty common occurrence. And it usually comes, kind of unprovoked. It's not, like a big revenue generator or anything for me. It's just something we kind of do for retirement plans as a one-off. So that's been kind of interesting. I'd say that's probably been, the biggest thing over the last week or so, that kind of stuff.
Remind me, what is the difference between a Roth IRA and a IRA is the time in which you're taxed, right?
Correct. Yeah. So
So what income is taxed going in? Is that
yeah, so
the
it's pay me now or pay me later, basically. So the example I always use is, in a traditional IRA or the traditional side of a 401k, let's say you put in $5 a week and you make $100. The government will say, okay, you only made $95 and we're only going to tax you on that $95. So the $5 will go into the traditional 401k or traditional IRA and then grow. And then when you take it out in retirement, that turns into your new paycheck. And now that's taxable as ordinary income.
perfect explanation? Thank you.
Roth kind of works. Yeah, I've been doing this a while. Roth kind of works the opposite way. You put $100 in, the government says you still made $100. You're putting your $5 in your account. It's not going to be taxable as it grows. Then when you take it out in retirement, it's tax free. So anything the company puts in for you is always on that taxable side. So what I tell people just starting off, especially if they're younger, you say, all right, you've got a 3% match going in. That's going to be taxable in your retirement. Let's put your 3% in on the Roth side. So you have those two buckets going. Who knows where taxes are going to be in 40 years, but you don't want to have all your money in one bucket. Just like you diversify your investments, you want to diversify your tax strategy as well. So you're pulling it from different spots. So, those two working in confluence with a third bucket that says, all right, I got 40 years. What can I get if I need money in 10 years? What if I want to build up this outside account, and if I want to buy a share of Tesla for fun, how do I do that? If I want to, that kind of stuff, which I think gets people a little more interested in talking about it rather than the yawn of, well, if you do, $40 a paycheck and in 40 years, you're going to have $1.2 million. It's like, yeah, that's great. But 25 years old, I got a million things I want to do before then. So,
Right. That's
that
interesting. And do you see typically is it common that people have a Roth, have the IRA or 401k, they have both, so they kind of they feed both investment vehicles?
Yeah, usually that's a lot of actually 401k plans. It's not a standard feature still, the Roth at this point. Almost all new plans have them, but plans that haven't been updated in a while, the Roth is still relatively new, that feature. So a lot of 401k plans didn't have it. A lot of people might not have it. So that's another point of emphasis too. Maybe you get somebody who's 35, 40, they came from a job that didn't have a Roth bucket. It's like, all right, now we got to catch up a little bit on the Roth side. So, and then you can do, some plans allow for in-plan Roth conversions. So that's another sort of technical thing, but that would be where you can kind of convert the money inside of the 401k plan, but not every plan allows that.
Can I continue the interview? I have some more questions.
Yeah, sure. I hope I can answer them.
Can you speak to what kind of faith the employee has to have in the employer's plan administrator?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's different components to a 401k plan. So you'll have the record keeping, which, in your world, that's a technology platform. That's going to be who's going to receive the dollars and run the website and run the security, which is probably most important to you. So those are, names like Vanguard or Fidelity, or that's the platform that it sits on. Your next level is the administrator. Now, sometimes the platform is also the administrator, or sometimes the administrator is a third-party administrator, referred to as a TPA.
Or an agent of the company, right?
Yeah, it can be. It can be. It's not generally advisable, but it can be. A lot of times now, Every 401k has to file a 5500. That's the tax form every year.
Right.
So a lot of the administrators now will sign those, which is a big deal because they're taking the fiduciary responsibility. If you're, bakery with 8 or 9 employees, you don't want to be signing that 5500 every year, because you're basically, you're attesting to all the data that's been filled out on that form is correct. So somebody's feeding you the data and says, here, sign this. You're
Right.
ultimately responsible. So you can now outsource that, which is a relatively new development. So you have your record keeper, your administrator, you have your advisor, which is usually choosing the record keeper and choosing the administrator and making sure they're doing their job, as well as choosing the investments and educating the employees. And then of course you have your employer. So
And
and your investment options.
how much opportunity is there for malfeasance?
Well, so that's part of the reason you want to have that as much fiduciary liability outsourced as you can. So the two big ERISA codes that you'll hear are 338 and 316. So it's 316. So 316 outsources that administrative liability, and 338 outsources that investment responsibility. So if you have both of those, that's about as good as you can get, because you're saying, all right, whoever did the administrative part, they're filling out the 5500 and maybe signing it too. So I'm off the hook for that. And then 338 is somebody else picks the investment, so I'm off the hook for that. The spot where people can run into some trouble is if there's issues uploading the payroll. So a big no-no, of course, is taking money out of employees' paychecks and not uploading it to the system and not putting the money in their accounts. So that's an area where there can be a problem. So that's why all 401k plans are required to have an ERISA bond for that. That anybody that handles money, they're required to have a certain amount of bonding to cover those sort of issues if something like that happens. But again, if you've got an advisor who's on top of it and you've got a record keeper, they now have the systems in place to say, hey, you upload your payroll every Friday afternoon at 4:00. It's now Wednesday. Where is it? What happened? So they'll email those reminders. And you have participants are much more vigilant now. A lot of them are, checking it on the weekend to make sure their deposit went through, just pulling up the app on their phone or whatever.
My wife.
So those are really, not to say that things can't happen inside a 401k, but it's a lot harder to do now, which is obviously a good thing.
Is it what about employees or workers that have employment instability? It's everybody. Well, you read articles now where people I remember 10 years ago we were reading articles that millennials would change careers 3 times. We're actively hiring some roles in our organization, and I regularly see resumes where people aren't putting in more than a year or 18 months with a company, and they're changing companies every 2 years or less. What happens to those employees? Do they I know there's some regulation that I guess the former employer has to continue to sponsor at some capacity outgoing employees, but is that forever? What kind of chaos is wreaked in that kind of for that
Yeah,
person?
so well-run plan will communicate the options right away when people leave the company. It's generally not a good idea from a company perspective to have old employees hanging around in the plan, because just like people change jobs, they change residences, and now you're trying to chase down. You have no idea where this person moved to, and you've got statements and all that sort of stuff. So from an IRS standpoint, you can push former employees out of the plan if they had less than $500. You can just send them a check. If it's between 500 and 5,000, you can push them to an IRA program if you want. You can just open up an IRA and push that money there. If they have $5,001, there's nothing really you can do to force them out of the plan. So it's kind of interesting. Some employers would actually like holding on to some balances, especially higher balances, because it might make their plan a little bit bigger and they might get really good pricing. So sometimes they're not in a huge hurry to push those out. sometimes advisors who are billing on the amount of assets in the plan might not be that interested in pushing people out of the plan. So you get that
So
too.
then do you have a situation where an employee goes to a new company and says, "Hey, I've got an investment account with my former employer," like just on the payroll allocation form with the new, you just send the money to that account?
So it's getting to that point. So they're working on this kind of clearinghouse system because right now it's still a pain to move money from one institution to another. Sometimes that's intentional, and the record keepers don't want to give up those assets that
Is that Swift?
quickly. Yeah, so they want to make you jump through hoops, and even now their wait times can be 30, 40 minutes sometimes. So it's like, yeah, we're not in that much of a hurry to hire people just to let other people take their money out. So, because then it's kind of a double-edged sword. So, but they're working on some things like a clearinghouse system that will make it easier for people to follow, from one job to another. Some other things you have to think about. Not all 401k plans allow people to roll their money in, so that may not even be an option. So if you're bouncing every job, new job every 3 years, ideally you'd want that to either follow you or have an IRA that kind of collects these as you move job to job. So not every new plan will accept those rollovers.
Hmm.
As an advisor, you're supposed to communicate directly with the participant and say, okay, you've left the company. Here are your options. You can leave it at your old plan, maybe roll it to your new plan, roll it to an IRA. Those are really your three choices. Or you could, of course, do a cash out that just says, send me the money and I'll pay the taxes and pay the penalty if there is one. So those are your really 3/4 options.
And this is what you help your clients with, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Can I just say, it sounds like you do a high amount of administrative and people work, and I don't know how much you get paid, but I hope it's a lot.
Well, it's one of the things that we talked a lot of, even on our early episodes of what how to bill 401k plans and how to bill our different systems. And it's something like IT. You never want to say it's easier, but you don't have an asset that you're working from, right? I mean, in a perfect world, maybe you could charge every employee, $150 a year. But if you've got employees who are putting away $10 a pay period or something, your fee is going to start eating away at their whole account. So that doesn't work. But if you do something asset based, and it's really tough. So you just have to make sure you're monitoring these plans, monitoring the flow, and making sure that the amount you're charging is appropriate, not just to the business owner, but to the employees as well. In a
Right.
perfect world, business owners will write a check to all their providers and not have it come from employee accounts. That's the perfect scenario, and I think it's in the best interest of the employees and usually the business owner too. And we're happy to see clients do that, but not every business owner has the money to do that. So, there's no right or wrong answer to that. It's just you can have
Well,
the
it's these
employees pay
challenges.
for it
It's these
or the
challenges that
employer.
are kind of coming up because as the mandates are coming down the pike, more and more smaller employers with less sophistication are going to be encountering the unique challenge of becoming plan administrators or sponsors for uh, small retirement groups, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're gonna have small employers who sign up for state plans and like, wow, this is great. And then they realize that they've got to manually upload payrolls, to the state every week or every 2 weeks, or, deal with chasing down employees that leave and all that kind of stuff. So, penny wise, pound foolish, right? It's like you're trying to take the cheap and easy way out. It's like, just be an adult and hire a professional to do this for you,
Yeah, but when you're
Um,
selling lemonade on the side of the street and your
yeah.
revenues are small and
Well, and
it's
and there's federal tax credits that pay for almost everything anyway the first 3 years, and those are probably going to get extended. So, most plans with 10 or fewer employees, after the tax credits, not tax deduction, tax credits, it's usually no cost to the business anyway. But anyway, that's a lot on that. So
good
lots
stuff.
going on.
I didn't mean to co-opt the whole chat,
No,
but
that's fine. But
I
that's the
like
stuff that kind of
I
keeps
like
me
when
up.
you educate me, and hopefully the viewers will find that education, uh, or educated, whatever,
Educational.
educational. Thank you.
So I'm Brian Williams from Northshire Consulting, which is an independent investment advisory firm in Connecticut. So we work with individuals, families, small businesses to work on their investments and planning around that. So northshireconsulting.com is where you can find us. For our social media platforms, we use the handle 401k and beyond. So that's YouTube, that's our Instagram, a little bit of TikTok, our Facebook group, which is pretty robust at a couple thousand members. But that's where you find us, northshireconsulting.com, and then social media is 401k and beyond. Where are you at, Eric?
I'm Eric Buhrendorf, CEO and Senior Business Consultant of EVERNET Consulting. We're a national IT consulting and support company. We're servicing businesses all over the country and their IT needs. You can find us at evernetco.com. Schedule a discovery call right with me from there. And you can find us on most social platforms at EVERNetCO. Looking forward to chatting with you. And that's it.
We'll see you next week.
See you next week.